I did not get a message back yesterday from Corporation of America in Nashville, the press department, which I had called asking for a comment about a story I think I'll be posting today regarding correspondence with inmate Grenda Harmer with State Representative Barbara Cooper and the Commissioner of Correction and other correspondence that tells about his efforts to, well, you might say to look out for the state's interest. It seems that there is a problem in the for-profit management of jails and prisons. The problem brought to light by this inmate who's effectively, I'd say, a kind of correspondent for Nooganomics.com. I've made contact with him, and he has been sending me correspondence, handwritten letters with details that befit the work of a journalist. Now, you could say that these correspondences are all fictitious, and that is what they are being called by the spokeswoman of the Department of Correction in Nashville, Nasa Taylor. That's what she calls his work. Is simply fictitious. But the way it's written and the documentation that he supplies me, which I'll be putting out there today, suggests that he may be onto something. And part of the problem that Grenda Ray Harmer is his name, and it is an unusual name, and I'm not quite sure about the origin of it, and I've not asked him where it's from. He is saying that Core Civic Corrections Corporation of America, the new branding is now Core Civic, which is a very patriotic company, for profit, making millions and millions for its public shareholders, in the business of prisons, and, as they say, corrections. Though prisons have nothing about corrections in them at all, they are simply an industrial complex that feed off of the state and the state's pretended interest in justice, and running a system that has about 30,000 inmates, in slaves, if you will. They're all slaves in Tennessee. So I didn't hear back yesterday, and when I called this morning, when I was at Panera getting my act together to chat with you, my listener, it was too early, so I couldn't make contact with the media department to get Core Civic on the phone, and to hear what this man is saying, because I want to get both sides in. This is David Tulis. We are here at 92.7 FM Nooga Radio. Thank you for giving us a moment of your time. I'm arguing for local economy and the free market, and seeing in developments the prospect for gain and a disintegration. In disaster, there are gains for us, right? As these centralized economic systems that involve, in large regard, employment, as they disintegrate, we are seeing the future, and I would say not with dread. I think we should look to the future and the breakup of the employment model with excitement. The IRS, no doubt, is very unhappy about the prospect of more contractors, more 1099ers being out there, of those people who agreed to file to enter into the administrative realm and file tax returns, yielding their constitutionally guaranteed rights, which everybody does who files a tax return. You yield your rights and enter into the sub basement in law. That's the administrative realm of law. So many people are doing that, but probably some are seeing that they can be outside the system. Though the system, the banking system, the surveillance system put up by the good people, is making gains on the outward form. No doubt, through surveillance, through the Patriot Act and revision, and keeping the Patriot Act and revisions in the law, and tightened security, keeping you here in Saudi Daisy, you here in Red Bank, safe from terrorism. The breakup of the employment model, the centralized model of the master-slave relationship, or the master-servant relationship, is seen in a neat little post, a repeat post picked up by Tyler Durden at Zero Hedge, and it's about what he calls the side hustle. It's actually, that term is not his. It comes from Quid Corner, which looks at ways in which, as it says, you can dip your toes into the side hustle economy. and it's suggesting that you, my listeners, should try it. And I think it's very exciting. For example, as we sometimes point out, take a hobby, something about which you're passionate, and turn it into a service, something that you're good at, something that you enjoy doing. Find a way of making that benefit to more people, right? That is to say, to monetize it. Now, I don't really like the word monetizing something because it sounds like, well, the reason you're entering into that relationship is to have money come to you. Well, that is something you should consider, of course, and you should probably not try to develop a hobby into a service or a business if you can't find remuneration. Okay. On the other hand, I'd say that monetizing it suggests that that's the reason for you're getting involved in it. But I would say let's do better than that. All right, let's do better than simply doing something because there's money at the other end. I know. Look, I understand. Look, I'm in business and I understand about cash flow. Cash flow can become a possessory claim upon your conscience, upon your mind, upon your dreams, even if you're having business problems. I understand that. On the other hand, I would say that you can't, even though you may have distress every now and then and not being able to get all the bills paid and to have to negotiate with a person who's got an invoice coming at you, negotiate at least a partial payment. You shouldn't let your distress control. Okay, what should control? Well, let me suggest the following. That would be your customer, and you should be involved in your business not because you want the cash or have that as a preeminent thought in your mind. You should be thinking about your customer. Okay, and that would be, if you have a hobby, that would be something in the direction of a service or a passion. So, for example, a side hustle from a hobby would be you can become a personal chef at Hire a Chef. That's a platform. You have T-shirt designs. Well, you can part with those at Cafe Press or Zazzle. Those are websites, and again, those are places where people have relationships in the direction of T-shirts. Okay, logos, designs on T-shirts. Of course, there's Etsy. I have a daughter, a very crafty, craft-oriented young woman, 25 years old now, making her way as a sculptress in New York. She lives in New York and has a studio there and has some clients there and so on. So she started out. She had part of her start on Etsy. You can sell website templates at Invato, and Shutterstock will be happy to buy your photographs. So you just have to set up an account and meet the terms, and then you can become a provider, and you can generate a little bit of income on photos that you take. So you could have a Chattanooga oriented photo stock, and I'm a publisher. I run Nooganomics.com, and if you do that and I find out about it, well, then you've got me as a customer, because I'm not going to pay you a fortune for using your photographs of, let's say, the mayor or an event downtown or neighborhoods or particular government slum. I need photographs of that. I just go to your account on your name on Shutterstock and buy your photographs. I don't have to go down there and make my own pictures. So you've done me a service, right? So that's, again, you have a decentralized economy that we may not even have met, and I can still be your customer if you have the kind of pictures that I want. And then another side hustle would be knowledge base, and that as this infographic at Quid Corner suggests, you can be a freelancer through Upwork or Fiverr. You could become a tutor by Skype or Wisent. You can have you can create an online course at Udemy. Think about it, make an online course about something about which you know. You can do an ebook, of course, through Kindle Direct Publishing, and answering questions in your area of expertise. That would be Just Answer. And there are ways that if you do that, you can start generating small revenue streams again in your area. And you might say, well, boy, people are doing that. People are putting out all kinds of answers that may not be right. Well, maybe, but don't forget, we have the marketplace long term, right, to aggregate responses, aggregate the analysis of what's being offered. So if you have a website that has a lot of bad advice, that's going to catch up with that website at some point. If that webmaster doesn't control the quality, he's going to suffer, and long term he's out of business. So you can keep it up for a while, but not forever. So you have to be confident that that people will find out, and that providers of negligible or erroneous material or bad material or unreliable goods and services that they're not going to last. Just be confident that their sins will catch up with them. Okay. What about the sharing economy? Here we've got an exciting area of development, and that would be, for example, Airbnb. Now, Airbnb was big in the news not too long ago, and it's going to become in the headlines in the next few days through the arrival, the imposition of this illegal ordinance passed by the city council. But in Airbnb and like platforms, you can rent out a spare bedroom. What about tools? Well, apparently, Neighbor Goods is a place where you can rent out your tools. You can rent your car on Turo. So if you're out of the country for 2 weeks and you're part of the Turo network, you can have your car made available and someone can use it, and you can receive a stipend for it. And clothes, well, if you've got some special garb for parties or events or maybe Halloween, you can rent out your clothes at Style Lynn. And TaskRabbit, you can become a local handyman by being a part of that. And, of course, you've heard here in the Chattanooga area, you've heard ads for Tackle, T-A-K-L. That's and Tackle is looking for people to be service providers. Again, through that network, you can have local economy. Local people are going to be looking for local handymen. And so they'll find you on those platforms. So you have the intergalactic internet, allowing people locally to have a hyper-local, loco-centric economy. I think it's very exciting, and I want to be part of that. That's why here at Nooga Radio, we are Nooga-centric. We are jealously, narrow-mindedly local. Okay, I understand. I'm a cosmopolite. Okay, so I understand that there is a certain kind of bigotry and insularity in lococentrism, just as there is a kind of prejudice, you could say, in the idea of nationalism in the economy, right? That would be Steve Bannon's arguments for nationalism, requiring tariffs to raise the prices of steel imports to keep the steel industry and its unions in high money, right? That's why that's called economic nationalism. And there's something anti-free market about it, and there is. And on the other hand, while local economy has this defect, it does have the defect of sort of somehow thinking that the marketplace doesn't work, and somehow that if people will favor local just because that person's local. Well, that works sometimes, and it doesn't always work. And of course, if you have a free market, your players all can choose whom they want, and no one player has an advantage, a price advantage, or a market access advantage over others. And that's really what we want. We want there to be a level playing field. Now, many people who propose bills, write bills to have new statutes, they argue for level of playing field and so on, but they're not really doing that. If you have to write a statute to make a playing field, you should be really deleting statute. If you write statutes to make a level playing field, you're probably favoring somebody. So I think that the act of writing more lines of code is probably, in general, not free market oriented, and very few elected officials ever talk about deleting code. I mean, I know President Trump has, and he should be lauded for it. On the whole, and in general, that's a good thing if we can delete regulations in the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, or delete, erase, nullify, and strike out, right? Strike through lines in the U.S. Code. Other side hustles include online side hustles. You can buy and sell used items on eBay, of course. There's big business there. In fact, there are businesses here that will take commission on your eBay sales. It will do it all for you. It will write the text. It will take the photographs. It will post, and you pay a commission. I remember I used eBay. A man who did that, he didn't have his own business, but he sold some Pyramid camping grills that I had bought for capital purposes and sharing purposes prior to Y2K 17 years ago. So after Y2K came and went, I had these extra grills that were no longer in production. They were kind of space-age treats in that field, and sold, I think, 3 or 4 Pyramid cooking devices through him, and he got a pretty nice commission, and I got some cash out of that. So that was through Craig. That was through eBay. So that's again online side hustle. You can get into affiliate marketing. You can do small tasks at Amazon's Mechanical Turk. This article suggests you can become a virtual assistant on Belay or Fancy Hands. You can fill out online surveys at iSay or Swagbucks. And there are other things that are part of this decentralizing economy. Think if you're an investor, you can buy a 3D printer, and there are writers and journalists who are suggesting that the 3D is an amazing force, and that it will destroy centralization in the manufacturing. In fact, we can all, in this sort of dreamy view of the future with 3D printing, we can all become manufacturers. We invest $2,000 or $3,000 per printer, maybe less, set up shop in our garages, and we can have an entirely automated system. And all we have to do every day is come to the out tray on the printer and box and ship. That's all we have to do. The system provides the label. It tells us who's getting it, who's paying for it. It tells us that the money's in the bank, and all we're doing is handling the shipping. We are all manufacturers on a small scale. We don't know the buyers. We don't know where these things are that we are going, that we've produced, that our printers have produced while we were sleeping. While we were pouring the milk on our Cheerios, the last little gadget was being printed out in the garage. And just before you go to work, you check what's there. You get the labels. You get the boxes that fit the size of the items. You do a little inventory quality control exam, and you take these 4 or 5 boxes with you on the way to work. And at lunch, you, my listener, go to either the U.S. Postal Service or UPS or FedEx to make your shipment. And that's the future, right? We're all potentially manufacturers in the coming 3D economy. The idea of the 3D economy, again, where you make an investment of either time or capital and a bit of knowledge, and you are your own boss. Of course, the people you deal with, especially if they're corporations, will demand, they'll demand your SSN and so on, which they have probably a duty to ask it, but you don't have a duty to have one. You may be one of those growing number of undocumented people, right? Okay, don't get me started. Don't get me started on that, because I think I like undocumented people, and I tried to become an undocumented American back in the early 2000s, and I was told by the Tennessee Court of Appeals that I did have an avatar. I did have, and I do have a social security number. It was a claim made apart from any of the evidence, and it was a specious non-fact based assertion by these judges. And so I guess I'm like you, my listener, right? I'm a documented American, right? And carry in my bones, and will carry to the grave, the obligations to be a U.S. person and one of the people subject to the Congress as a subject, right? I'm a subject to the good people. So in the future, though, I think we need to understand that those systems will be they're morally bankrupt. They're legally bankrupt. They're legally supported by the courts, but they're morally bankrupt, and they will not last. They will not last. They will be changed not by revolt, not by revolution, I don't think, but rather by the great movements in the economy, the great movements of technology, and hopefully, by God's grace, by a moving among the people of this country who live. We're a country now, we're a nation now, but hopefully there'll be future non-political organizations that are regional, that are maybe more geocentric and more substance-based rather than threat and fear-based, which is what keeps propped up today the national political and legal system. You ask about these systems. They are enslaving economic, political, and legal systems. We have slavery today, and that's why, in a way, I'm a little chagrined when I hear about objections to the monument of General A.P. Stewart at the front of the Hamilton County Courthouse, objecting to his connection to the Southland, to the Confederacy, which defended the system of slavery. We have slavery today far worse than that. It really is far worse. And it's hard to see. And in a way, it's hard to be offended by because it's impersonal. We don't realize that we live in slavery today, but because it's not personal and we don't have clanking chains that we have to lug around with our lunch pails and our briefcases as we go to work, we think that we're free. But it is just different. But I think this is David Tulis, and I'm very confident about the future. I believe in the idea of progress, and I believe that the Holy Writ, Scriptures, have a social theory, and that the good things of equity and grace that are the power of the market are there for not just individuals, but society as a whole. David Tulis.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever